College football, please save the sports fan. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I've got in my hand right here the top 10 non-conference games for 2020. Hopefully there will be college football in 2020. I've just set the countdown clock to give us all a little bit of hope for college football. As of this taping, not necessarily when you're watching this video, but as of right now, we have 166 plus days until the opening week 0, with an estimated kickoff time of the first game of about 2 o'clock Eastern time. That's what I went with. There's the countdown. It's unofficial, but it's the only one we've got. And again, maybe it gives us just a little bit more hope of some competition on the field and some release, some entertainment, of course, for the sports fan. Please be safe. Do smart things in your life, but of course, be wise, be safe, but also no fear. No fear. We don't need any more panic and fear out there. All right, let's get to the top 10 games for 2020. Let's make it 11. All right, shall we? Georgia-Virginia get together on September 7th. Another ACC-SEC affair to begin the season, as we've seen most of the time over the recent college football seasons. 2 new quarterbacks for these teams, of course. Jake Fromm off to the NFL, as is Bryce Perkins. The number one offensive leader in the history of Virginia football, depending on how you count the bowl games. 69% of Virginia's offense surprisingly came through the air. They will need to run the ball better to remain an ACC contender. Under most likely who's going to be the quarterback for Virginia this year is Brennan Armstrong, and replacing Bryce Perkins. Jamie Newman coming in from the ACC's Wake Forest Demon Deacons to quarterback Georgia, of course. Wayne Talapapa scored 12 rushing touchdowns for Virginia, but only 4.1 yards per carry. Going to be difficult to mount a rushing offense for the Cavaliers against that Georgia defense. Virginia's last 2 efforts against the SEC, of course, a big bowl win against South Carolina, 28-0 to conclude 2018, but thumped by Florida in a pretty competitive game. They did hang in the game against the Gators in the Orange Bowl, but with that Georgia talent, expect Zamir White and company to win big. And Zamir White may have his coming out party against the Cavaliers on the national stage September 7th. Our tie for the 10th best non-conference tilt for 2020 belongs to Georgia-Virginia. And also, how about the game at Lane Stadium between Penn State of the Big Ten and the ACC's Virginia Tech Hokies on September 11th? Hendon Hooker back at quarterback for the Hokies, 13 touchdowns, 2 picks. Sean Clifford at Penn State did not play well. Good stats to complete the season, under 60% completion percentage, though. Did not play well against the better teams, and especially did not play well on the road. Penn State rushing the football, one of the better rushing teams in the country. The backfield is loaded. 4 tremendous backs, led by, of course, Journey Brown, who was the man down the stretch for the Nittany Lions and totaled over 200 yards rushing against Memphis in the Cotton Bowl. And, of course, again, Hendon Hooker back at quarterback for the Hokies. Rayshard Ashby, one of the top ACC defenders, 17 tackles for loss for the Hokies, will be back. Virginia Tech, known for its prowess at home at Lane Stadium, just 4-5 against Power 5 opponents the past 2 seasons at home in 2018 and 2019. Our game tie for number 10, Penn State, Virginia Tech at Lane Stadium, September 11th. Game number 8 reeks of tradition, prestige, talent, speed, big-time college football right here in Alabama and USC on September 5th. But we saw this game, of course, in 2016 to open the season, and Bama bludgeoned the Trojans 52-6. A game which featured Sam Darnold and Jalen Hurts, but both of them were on the sideline to start the game. Jalen Hurts came into the game, and the tide rolled, but Sam Darnold eventually would lead USC to the Rose Bowl and a top 5 finish, but did not see the field in this game as USC was destroyed, again, 52-6. This time around, it's Keaton Slovis and his 30 touchdowns, surprisingly off the bench for USC against Mac Jones. Bama's, of course, loaded even after losing what may turn out to be the 2 top wide receiver prospects to the NFL draft. USC loaded at wide receiver as well, despite losing Michael Pittman, with Amon-Ra St. Brown and, of course, also Trey Vaughns. And this may be the only positional group in which USC actually stands a chance against Alabama. I also love the play of Drake Jackson, a D-tackle for USC, and Talanoa Hufanga is one of my favorite players to watch in college football. This kid flies all over the place on defense. USC has some talent peaks in spots, but Bama comes at you in waves. This one could be ugly again. Dylan Moses back after missing all of 2019 with an ACL back, is one of the best backers in the game. Bama USC, September 5th, our 9th best non-conference game of 2020. At number 8, we've got Tennessee at Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma cannot handle the Vols at home on September 11th, it does not bode well for the Big 12. This game was played in 2015, 2014, and 15, the last time these teams matched up, just 4 or 5 years ago, as Baker Mayfield and Josh Dobbs got together, and Tennessee led by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter before blowing the game late and losing in overtime at home. Tennessee, after starting 1-4, 8-5 finish with a bowl victory. The comeback against Indiana, down by 13 points in the fourth quarter. Cade Mays, the big 5-star transfer at offensive line, moving in from Georgia. Also, Trey Smith opted not to enter the NFL draft. He's back for Tennessee. They had a top 10 recruiting class. Jeremy Pruitt's program is looking up. Wouldn't have been able to say that about 5 months ago. But looking up at Tennessee, of course, you've got the 5-year starter, or the 5-year senior in Jarrett Guarantano for Tennessee. He's trying to hold off others in a 4-quarterback battle. Spencer Rattler, the number 1 dual-threat quarterback in the 2019 class, should prove to be the starter for Oklahoma. Sooners and Vols in Norman on September 11th. Game number 7. We would not have mentioned the name North Carolina in recent years in naming the top 10 games or the top games of anywhere, any place. But North Carolina, again, a factor after completing a 7-6 season in a bowl victory under Mack Brown in his second stint in Chapel Hill. UNC goes to Central Florida on September 4th. UNC, to me, is the most intriguing team in the ACC, coming back with Sam Howell and his 38 touchdowns thrown as a true freshman. Their top 2 backs are back, both close to 1,000-yard rushers. Their top 3 receivers back. Most of their productivity on defense. 4 offensive linemen after just losing their all-ACC center. UCF counters with Dylan Gabriel, 29 touchdowns, 7 picks, who will battle Darryl Mack for the starting position, who was the starter, of course, in replacing Mackenzie Milton in 2018. Entertaining matchup here. North Carolina, UCF in Orlando, September 4th. Game number 6. Another big traditional battle, the best cross-sectional rivalry in college football. Notre Dame goes to USC on November 28th. The Irish have won 3 straight in this series. This probably will not have college football playoff implications. USC's got a difficult schedule. Notre Dame will have to deal with Clemson earlier in the month. Ian Book versus Keaton Slovis. Again, the most prestigious, the most tradition-rich cross-sectional rivalry in college football. Notre Dame, USC, September 28th. This one always has to be watched. With currently no NBA, NHL, or Major League Baseball, you might think there's nothing to bet on. Well, you'd be wrong. BetOnline still has hundreds of places to wager, from their online casino to poker and blackjack, all open 24 hours a day and all online. Sports aren't totally done. There's still mixed martial arts, golf, esports, XFL, and many more. And hey, what about American Idol? The elections, the spelling bee, and even the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. Be sure to use promo code CLNS50. That's CLNS50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your very first deposit. Bet Online, your full access wagering solution. Game number 5, we've got North Carolina back in for a second appearance in the top 10 most important, best matchups of 2020 non-conference. Auburn, North Carolina on September 11th. Just 1 week after taking on UCF, Carolina is going to have to get back up for another big matchup. Auburn, of course, has represented the SEC well in big matchups non-conference in the last 2 years, taking on the Pac-12 in defeating Washington and Oregon in very, very close games down to the wire. The ACC and the SEC get together more than any two conferences in Power 5 by far. Of course, we've got the 4 traditional matchups on Thanksgiving weekend: Georgia, Georgia Tech, Clemson, South Carolina, Kentucky, Louisville, and Florida, Florida State. But they also match up more than any other conferences in the series that they schedule. The ACC and the SEC did not match up well this past season, with the SEC winning 8 of 11. Clemson won 2 of the 4, or 8-4. 8-4 SEC over the ACC in 2018. Clemson won 2 of those matchups. Bo Nix looks to improve as Auburn looks to stay in the SEC Western Division race. Of course, this will not factor into that, but Auburn's splash onto the national scene is against North Carolina on September 11th. All right, game number 4, we've got Notre Dame back in our top 10, taking on Wisconsin. I love this matchup. Love it. At Lambeau Field on October 3rd. Wisconsin hosted LSU at Lambeau Field back in 2016, won a very close affair 16-14. You've got Jack Cohn back at quarterback for Wisconsin after completing 70% of his passes. If he's able to hold off the 4-star Graham Mertz, who's been on campus for 2 years now. Of course, Jonathan Taylor needs to be replaced at Wisconsin. There's not going to be one back who's going to fill those shoes. Nakia Watson and Garrett Groshek have the most experience and productivity coming back at running back for Wisconsin. But Isaac Guerendo, I believe that's how you pronounce the young man's name. He's an Indiana track star. He's got the highest ceiling, along with Julius Davis, who redshirted last year, to eventually be the star running backs at Wisconsin. Notre Dame, this is their biggest obstacle before facing Clemson the first week of November. It's Notre Dame, it's Wisconsin at Lambeau Field. It reeks of tradition. This should be a great matchup between two physical football teams on October 3rd. Game number 3. It was my number 1 game of the non-conference matchups in 2019, and it proved to be well worth the wait. This time, Texas goes to LSU to take on the defending national champions. LSU won a nail-biter at Texas, 45-38. Keep in mind, we didn't know what LSU would become at that point. We knew that they were ultra-talented, thought that they had a workman-like quarterback, a game manager type in Joe Burrow. He threw 60 touchdowns. We didn't know about Joe Brady being the X factor. Brady and Burrow, of course, leading a 15-0 run and the most prolific offense in college football with 726 points, scored a season record. Miles Brennan, the 4-star, replaces Burrow, who will probably be a Cincinnati Bengal by the time Texas and LSU get back at it. Was LSU a one-hit wonder, a one-season wonder? Sam Ehlinger, back at quarterback for Texas for his last go-around. Is Texas finally back? We thought after winning the Sugar Bowl and reaching the Big 12 championship game in 2018, many thought that they were back. They were not. They lost 5 games last year. Looked mighty impressive, though, in their last outing in the Alamo Bowl against Utah, winning 38-10. Texas has to go to Death Valley this time to take on LSU on September 11th. Our game number 2 features 2 teams who met in 2 important games in 2010 and 2015 in the Rose Bowl in the national championship game. Ohio State bested Oregon in both games as an underdog. Maybe the odds makers will get it right this time, but this time the Buckeyes will have to face Oregon at Eugene at night. Always a difficult place at Autzen Stadium, especially at night. Of course, Justin Herbert will be in the NFL at this point, so Oregon has a 4-quarterback battle ensuing. Of course, most likely they're going to have to wait until August before the battle continues, with redshirt freshman Tyler Shough as the favorite to gain the starting job at Oregon. Don't count out the third-rated pro-style quarterback, according to 247 Sports, Jay Butterfield, who threw 85 touchdowns in high school. He may get the start against Ohio State. It's Oregon's second game, as well as the Buckeyes as they travel out west to take on Oregon. And, of course, the Buckeyes have to replace all that NFL talent. Chase Young may be the number 1 selection in the NFL draft. Jeff Okudah will certainly be the number 1 corner taken. J.K. Dobbins at running back, of course, needs to be replaced by the Buckeyes, who are missing Master Teague during this spring session that's not being played anyway. Ohio State, Oregon in Eugene, our number 2 most important, most intriguing, best matchup of the 2020 non-conference season. And finally, at number 1, our number 1 game in the non-conference play of 2020 is Clemson at Notre Dame on November 7th. Clemson's got most of its offense coming back. They did lose T. Higgins to the NFL, but bring back a plethora of receivers, of course, led by Justin Ross. Travis Etienne, at this point in facing Notre Dame, will be finishing off one of the most prolific rushing careers in the history of college football, and maybe the number 1 rushing performance in terms of a career in the ACC. The storyline going into this game will, of course, be, can Clemson play elite football on the big stage? They lost at Georgia last year. They lost at Michigan last year. The last time they matched up against Notre Dame in the college football playoff, they were not up to the task, 30-3. The ACC, if it's just as bad, and keep an eye on the North Carolina games against UCF and against Auburn in particular, Virginia Tech against Penn State in particular, if the ACC plays it as poorly in the non-conference schedule as it has in recent years, Clemson, without the benefit of the doubt of being the defending national champion, may need to go undefeated. That means going to South Bend and defeating Notre Dame the first week of November. Our number 1 non-conference game of 2020 here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, Clemson going to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. Would love to get your comments on what games I missed, where they should have been ranked. Leave your comments in the comment section below. And, of course, subscribe to the College Football, Voice of College Football. We will see you next time.